welcome tea. We hope you had some good coffee. We are going to continue with the conversation of ports and rail with a more in-depth analysis. This panel has first-hand operational experience when it comes to railing and ports. So we'll take a look at how the rail reform and private sector participation will translate on the ground. Please welcome on stage Mccloskey Steel, Chief Commercial Officer at Transnet Group, Nusa Saranga, the Commercial Director of the Maputo Port Development Company, that's the NPDC, Ruan Motaung, the Chief Commercial Officer at Menar, and finally Kenneth Williams, the Executive Supply Chain and Business Development Lead at Makoya Supply Chain Holdings. Please give them a hand. Panel, welcome. Mccloskey, welcome back. Thank you for joining me today. We'll delve in deeper, of course, into the topic of rail and ports. As I've said that, you've got first-hand experience of what's happening. You're keeping an eye on the ground operationally, both on the railing side, Kenneth on the siding, you side at the Maputo Port, of course, Transnet, and Ruan yourself as well as a new operating company there. But we'll get into that. Let's start with you, Ruan. Menar is restarting the Motaung smelter to produce ferromanganese for exports. And you're also nominated as a third-party rail operator. That is a mammoth task. Tell me how you plan, or Menar plans to refurbish that line from the Northern Cape to Motaung. Just talk to us about Project Motaung in the rail sense.
Thank you so much. Yes, so it's a really important project for Menar, and I think for the country. That we've renamed it as Kwelanet. We've got a 50% joint venture with Kwela Capital, so it's a highly empowered vehicle, 50% black owned. We're very proud of that, and that's the largest ferromanganese complex on the planet. If we were to restart all four of the smelters, which we fully intend to do, we would be supplying around a quarter of the global seaborne manganese, ferromanganese. So I think it's very important for our company, but even more important for South Africa. As part of the TOC award, we were awarded private rail access from the Northern Cape to the Motaung smelter, and then from the Motaung smelter to Durban. So this obviously ties in critically with the future of this business. And I think lots of employment will flow from that, lots of revenue for the country, and I think it would set an extremely important example for the smelter sector to show that all stakeholders need to be engaged. Transnet needs to be involved, the communities need to be involved, you need the right partners, and you need the right electricity price, of course, but I think we've covered that thoroughly yesterday.
Hashtag 62 cents. Kenneth, looking back at 2025, considering Makoya's siding solution, what specific impact and contributions has Makoya had on South African chrome exports? And I'm talking, in numbers. How much cargo have you been able to expedite?
Yeah, thanks, Hlengiwe, and thank you to Mccloskey for this successful second inaugural conference. Last year we had a discussion about what Makoya did in terms of a structured decongesting model for the chrome industry. And just in a minute about Makoya, we've been known for the better part of 11 to 12 years in the industry, predominantly on coal. And we're known for having multi-user terminals. And, there was this market failure. Bongi's going to look at me, but there was this market failure in the chrome and ferrochrome industry, specifically on the North Corridor, where customers could not get the product to market due to the rapid cable theft and vandalism. And we came up with this model to decongest and de-stress that channel. Okay, we know that there's known cable theft hotspots around the Penduran, Brits area, strategically targeting the rail network, and we decided to come up with our privately owned Mokoya terminal in Witbank. It is a terminal that is strategically placed because the reason I say strategically is because it has two routes. It has two routes to market. We have a Maputo route from Witbank and we've got the Richards Bay route as well. So for the chrome industry at large and the ferrochrome producers, it formed a hub that they could actually take product to, bypass the cable theft and the vandalism areas, and then actually get their product to market. With that being said, with that context in mind, the natural question is, what did this terminal do for the chrome industry? And I think you'll be surprised to know that as a non-producer, and I'm just going to put that out there, we are there to support the industries. It's the same with our coal side. We've got multi-user terminals on coal doing 300,000-400,000 tons a month. We decided to bring this into the chrome and diversify our business. And if we look at 2025, let's look at what Transnet has achieved. We know the market, what it's exported, around 20 million odd tons. Transnet achieved, for the 2025 year, they achieved 5.2 million tons rail. Okay, and it's good to see that Transnet's on the clawback now to bring back more volume into rail. And Mokoya has been there to support it since inception. If you just look at last year, being a non-producer, from the 5.2 million tons at Transnet Rail, Mokoya did 780,000 tons of that, which accounts for about 15% of the total rail volume as a non-producer. Now, we're not a competitor in the rail space. We've got our own shunting locos that shunt within our space. We are not a miner. We leave those to the subject matter experts to do. We focus solely on having an efficient terminal that allows customers to have route to market. So in essence, we've done 780,000 tons last year, but since inception, the project's around 3 years old. We've done 1.9 million tons through that facility. Predominantly to Maputo. We found that Maputo works well for the customers. The turnaround time's quicker, less impact. The port is more efficient in Maputo. We've been moving ferrochrome down to Richards Bay from the facility, and I think the 80 to 90% of that volume moved down, went down to Maputo.
That's impressive. I mean, almost 800,000 tons last year means that you do have a footprint when it comes to expediting chrome exports. And so I have a follow-up on what does these rail reforms mean for Mokoya?
So, look, in terms of rail reform, I think the country as a whole, this is the best thing that could happen in decades in this type, in the logistics industry. Our model is built for this at Mokoya. I said initially that we're not a rail competitor. We have a plug-and-play model. It doesn't matter who pulls the wagons on the main line. It's good that rail reform has come into play at this point, because last year we spoke on the panel about the network statement, and there was this excitement and this buzz to the industry, and this year we sit with 11 companies that have been awarded. We provide a plug-and-play terminal solution for the operators, and I think it's only going to strengthen the industry. It's going to allow some choices that will be made to the industry players, and there's going to be some shopping around, I'm sure, and which is good. Competition is good, but at the end of the day, as Bongi said earlier, this now adds to the target that's been set out by Trump. Sir,
more than 60% of South African chrome is exported through the Maputo port. How does the MPDC view South Africa's rail reforms?
Thank you for the question, Hlengiwe. We all know that for any regional trade, especially to grow, we need rail, and Maputo is no exception. Although as the port of Maputo, we are the closest port to the mining regions of Mpumalanga and Limpopo, and there is a border crossing, we do need the rail. So we do see rail as being a very strategic partner in what concerns the growth that we envisage for the port. Last year, we saw a growth of 17% of rail, which is tremendous from what we've seen in the previous years. But it's still not enough. If I look at MPDC as the terminal, because we have MPDC the concessionaire, that we also have other sub-concessions, which is coal and so on. But if you look at MPDC as the terminal that we handle chrome and ferrochrome, our ratio in terms of road and rail is 75-25%. So that is still a very high percentage on road. And this brings not only safety concerns, because Maputo is a city port and all of the trucks have to go through the city, so there's a lot of safety concerns, but it also brings a lot of inefficiencies. We see a lot of inefficiencies from the border, we've seen a lot of delays, and for us as a port, we do not only concern ourselves with what the port in its parameters, in its jurisdiction can do, but we also look at stakeholders. We look at the so our engagement goes together with CFM and also with other stakeholders at the border, like kilometer 4, kilometer 7, customs immigrations, and so on and so forth. So for us, rail is a must. And we see that even for our customers, they do have a preference for rail because of the number of the volume that it brings. If you're talking about for 150 wagon train, for instance, let's say, we'll be moving dozens of trucks from the road.
Yeah.
We receive on a daily basis between 800 to 1,400 trucks a day. So that is a lot of trucks to go through the border, and for us to be able to grow to the levels that we need, we definitely need rail. So rail reform is 100% a must. But it must go beyond the policy. It needs to actually be works on the ground. Things need to happen. Our customers need to see the increase in capacity from the rail, as opposed to, we speak the story, it's beautiful, but we need to get to actual practice to make it happen.
So ultimately, we'd like to see that rail to road ratio being the other way.
100%.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah. Ruan, as a new upcoming TOC, obviously locomotives will need to be sourced. How do you plan to do that? Just talk to us about the economics of you trying to figure out the locomotives and just finances in general.
I think when talking around the economics, it's important to first just explain the scale to the audience. So, Menar's been awarded 8.6 million tonnes per annum of private rail access. And this is from 6 different sources to 6 different locations, including Mozambique. It's one of the export destinations. In order for us to service just the capital cost for the rolling stock, the locos and the wagons, excluding the operational costs, is 4.5 billion rand. Right, so that's a big chunk of money, and that amount of money needs to be project financed. You can't put that all on risk on the balance sheet. It's just not responsible for the shareholders. And project finance, I'm happy to say that project funders are quite eager to invest in infrastructure in South Africa. We would probably have to purchase most of the locomotives and wagons because just after being awarded, we were approached by TIH, Transit International Holdings, who received all of the rolling stock that Transit is no longer able to use, and they said that they are open to leasing. Yeah. Unfortunately, after showing interest and actually specifically asking for the particular wagon types, we want more information on costs. We haven't received anything back from them. Yeah. So I think that's one of the big challenges. There seems to be a bit of a communication. Maybe it's on our side, I don't know, but we've really seriously tried to engage with the leasing company, but we've gotten no results. So we started looking at, buying the wagons and the locomotives ourselves, and that's where we got to the cost of 4.5 billion. We also need to employ about 380 people. We need to train up the drivers and get them certified, because we can't take that amount of drivers from Transit. It's just not right. So we've done all the operational planning for that. Now, with regards to funding the 4.5 billion, it's very possible. However, the rail access agreement that has been published by Transnet, it's online. The project funders have highlighted a number of clauses that are not workable.
Sure, and I think we'll come to that. We'll definitely come to that. Bonnie, Ruan touches on locomotives, and I think it's good that you are here, sort of to open that line of communication. And I think for the next batch of applicants who are you're going to open a new window for the next batch. Tell us how the local leasing is coming along. How are those options coming along?
So the leasing company is coming along quite well. What we've done is, of course, we needed to go through an open market process to identify partners. That's what has taken the longest of time. The approach there is to bring on board funding partners that will be able to then bring in the requisite capital to take the dormant or rolling stock that requires maintenance, bring it on board, maintain it, and make it available to the market. We were also in the market. We were also looking for a partner that has got leasing experience. We are a railway port or logistics operating company. We are not a leasing company, and therefore we needed a partner that would also understand how to run a leasing business. And that process is well underway. We got some significant interest from the market, some big players in the space, and that's coming together quite nicely. What we also did on the side is, whilst that was underway, if there were any kind of urgent transactions, we would enter into interim leases that would later on be transferred into the leasing company once it is fully established with the partner. And that's how we've been able to place a few pieces of rolling stock in some of the countries in the neighborhood. We've got wagons that are running in Zambia today. We've got a local tool in Zimbabwe. We've been able to do that. The only challenge with that is, in its current state, because we have not gotten that funder yet or that partner, if anyone leases in the current state, they then have to undertake the refurbishment cost on their end as part of the transaction now. But ultimately, once the leasing company is in place, we'll then transfer that lease across into the leasing company. So I'm taking note of one's comment regarding their application. It's something that we'll engage on. You might also find that depending on the type of wagon that you are looking for, that the fleet that is available may not necessarily accommodate all types that are required, but it's a conversation we're having.
Yeah, and that's what we're here for, right? To get those lines of communication here. And I hope your question has been answered already. Let's now really talk about some of the pressing concerns you've had with the current statement that you need to be refined and to be clearer. What are some of those nitty-gritties in the contract that you feel like, maybe we can have a relook at this?
Thank you so much. Yes, look, I can only address publicly available information because there's strict confidentiality around the agreements, so I'll only address that which has been published publicly on the website. I think the most pressing concern is that for funders is that the TOC will have to prepay for access regardless of the performance. Meaning if you've been contracted for 10 slots, you have to prepay for those 10 slots regardless of what happens on the line. If you only end up running 5, there's no repercussions for TFR from a contractual perspective. The TOC effectively has to absorb the majority of the risk with no real recourse to Transnet. TFR can also unilaterally amend the network statement, which is seen as a big issue for the funders. The funders aren't able to take security of the slots of the leasing arrangement, and force majeure suspends TRIM's obligations, but not the TOC's payments, is another example. There's a 10-year lock-in, regardless of all of these sort of commercial uncertainties. The TOC is also locked in for 10 years, regardless of what TFR's performance is and what the state of the line is. So if we were able as TOCs to control the particular state of the line, we'd say, okay, fair enough, then take the risk. But to take the risk for something that you cannot control, is difficult. But while I don't just want to look at the negative, I don't want to say that I don't think these are major points. I think they're clear enough to be resolved easily. And I'm still extremely positive, but I think I've got a long list that we're ready to discuss with TRIM. Once they get back to us, and I'm confident we'll resolve it.
Sure. And Bonia, I know we touched on how you plan to navigate this, but our lines of communication open when it comes to renegotiating some of these? Because it sounds like it leaves on the risk leaves on more to the TOC perspective. Is there opportunity for negotiating and ironing out some of these discrepancies?
Absolutely. Remember, we as Transnet also wear two heads in this equation. On the one hand, there is a TFR, that is a TOC, that is subjected to exactly the same concepts. And then there's TRIM that reports into IREC, that is sandwiched between TFR and IREC, or between the TOCs and IREC. That's where the problem is really, because from a practicality perspective, these are real issues. For some of us, and I know Erwan is also on the cold face of this, the engagements that we have with customers now, cargo owners. Cargo owners are not gonna, I'm touching on the point when Erwan says it's difficult to swallow these terms for funders. It's not just funders, cargo owners as well. As a TOC, when I sign up with the cargo owner, they are not going to accept me passing down the TRIM terms. Let's say I'm not guaranteeing you a service, but they are paying for a service, because there's a ripple effect here. Cargo owner has an off-taker somewhere in China, and that off-taker is going to keep the cargo owner honest in terms of delivering the cargo. Therefore, the cargo owner must keep the TOC honest in terms of running the service. Now, the TOC can't keep the main infrastructure owner honest. Once you break that, it breaks the entire value chain. So it's something that we, from a TFR perspective, has raised with TRIM as well, and it's something that TRIM has taken up with IREC as a conversation. But I'm highlighting that it's not a Transnet issue per se, because it does come from the regulatory environment that says the network statement must have these requirements embedded in them. But it really, at the crux of it, lacks practicality. You cannot offer a service and then not guarantee that service, and there be more implications if you don't perform.
That's right. And just to delve a little bit more finally on in terms of contracts and costs, how is, markets, especially with the manganese and chrome, they tend to be quite volatile. And so how is Transnet working to address these volatilities of commodity prices to ensure that, logistics costs remain competitive?
No, absolutely. To my earlier point, if you recall, I also mentioned on top of volatile markets, you also have flexible road transport service providers, and combined, these things do tend to give a perfect storm. In addition to that, the fact that government has approved, I'm forgetting the name of these trucks now that can take up to 63 tons. PBS, yes. That also has put us under a lot of pressure. That has caused a requirement for us to really go back to the drawing boards and really scrub our costs to say where can we optimize, and in optimizing, how do we then ensure that we give the most cost efficient service to the customer. But with all of those things, at the end of the day, it boils down to one thing. There is a proposal that we put out to industry around a partnership in absorbing market fluctuations and volatilities, which is commodity price participation. We had said to industry we are willing to engage on terms that when the markets are super healthy, we also earn a super margin of that. But when the markets collapse, we also go down to the floor. Yeah, we can only do so if we are able to participate in the upside. That builds then the buffer for us to be able to then suffer with you. So we are still open to that. That's one of the pricing mechanisms that we are willing to look at.
That's wonderful. Talk about infrastructure and technology. Earlier on, you touched on signaling and the work that you're doing on that front. And Kenneth, maybe just to bring it into this one, considering your siding solution is a crucial link, should we expect any parallel infrastructure investments from the Magoya side to support the Transnet planned refurbishments? What are you planning to do on your side just to upgrade and boost these refurbishments?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I think with Transnet upgrading the network, we have to have parallel. We've already instituted parallel development, infrastructure development across all our sites. I'll delve more into the chrome, but if you even look at our coal sidings, we service ESCOM, and ESCOM is also on this drive to upgrade the infrastructure. They've got the coal automated system which they put into our facilities, and if you look at chrome, chrome is a product, when you're talking of a product that's between $100 to $300 depending who's selling per ton. We talk of the ferrochrome that we handle is considerably more. And it's a high grade product that can't be allowed to go onto a normal ground surface. As your other commodities, you'd be allowed to put a sacrificial layer down and then stockpile on them. So chrome at the Magoya sidings is stockpiled on engineered stock pads. Which comes at a considerable investment in the cost. I mean, it costs millions to build a stockpile or stock pad area to house chrome. But the reason why we do that is to protect the integrity of the product. We're dealing with a high grade product, and ground losses are unacceptable, and we won't be having that on the Magoya to say that there's losses. So those are the kind of investments in terms of the stockpile areas. We are upgrading our shunting locomotives within the facilities, to pull. Chrome is a bit heavier, and to allow for those shunting locos to pull and place the wagons. Our operating model is simple. Transnet brings wagons to us and exchanges it, right? And within our control, within our shunting environment, we go and fetch those wagons, load the wagons, shunt it back into whichever siding we operate, shunt it back into an exchange yard with Transnet, and then hand the train back over to Transnet. So if we look at chrome and ferrochrome, the Highveld rail terminal was predominantly a two-shift system that we used to run, and knock off at 10 o'clock. And with the increase in volume that we've seen over the past year, we've now gone into a three-shift system, creating additional employment. We've also included, a lot of work for the community from those from the chrome itself. So I think, in terms of investment and infrastructure, we have to grow with Transnet. It doesn't help that Transnet grows. I'm saying Transnet as a whole holistically with TFR, and we know TRIM as the custodian of the network. But with the third-party operators coming back into the system, being able to plug them in, it doesn't help you have all of this upliftment, and your terminal doesn't have the efficiency for it. Hence, we built these additional toppers. I think if you look at the Rustenburg region, Hlengiwe, we've got 5 out of the 7 producers that are moving product into Highveld. Yeah.
So there's so much more development in parallel with transport,
Absolutely.
chrome pads, and making sure your clothes are on point. I now want us to tie up these rail reforms with ports and export dynamics. I mean, I think that's the ultimate, right? Nusa, I speak to a lot of chrome players in this space, and they cite Maputo. Whenever you ask them, what do you think about Maputo, there's always that one word that comes out, and it's efficiency, right? Operationally, what has made you stand out? Just give us a glimpse, especially also including your wins for 2025.
I think our strategy from the get-go has always been very objective, and it's mainly been focused on assessing the market and doing things that need to be done to be able to cater to the market. We're not shy in investing. We've got shareholders that believe in the management strategy, and they support us in the investments that need to be done. So our investments even go beyond the actual need. We always try to assess what tomorrow could potentially bring. Just to go back, even during COVID, borders were closed, no movement was going, but MPDC was investing in slabs. MPDC was buying equipment. So we were getting ready for what would come. So we are very, we take risks as well, but it's been mainly investing in infrastructure, investing in equipment, investing in labor. We train around, we've got our in-house training facility, and also using a lot of technology and innovation. We believe in systems only flowing when there's actually a technology innovation backed to it. And our focus is not only in the port itself, but we try to take even our systems and processes from a technology perspective all the way to the border, and integration with the rail line. In this case, for instance, we have a system integration with CFM, which is called Rail to Port, which monitors the movement of every single train the moment it crosses the border until it gets to Maputo and vice versa. With that, we've managed to recover 100 hours in terms of turnaround time. Right now, we've got a turnaround time of about 45 hours, and our target is between 30 and 35 hours. But we were coming back from about 130, 145 hours turnaround time from border to port and back. So we do a lot of investment in that perspective. We try to look at what can be done for the cargo to move faster. We bring in incentives to the customers for the cargo to not sit in the port. Dwell time, reduced dwell time is key, because we only have so much capacity. And continuously just looking at and discussing with the customers what their needs are. One of the things that Louis said in his earlier presentation is that there's a lot of investments or approaches that they've made that have come up from discussions with customers. The same applies with us. We have a very open door policy with our customers. We have system integration with our customers. And when they say, listen, why don't you test this out? We try to test it out and see whether it works. And if it doesn't work, we even had in my CEO's office, there's this drawing, it's a sketch that is even put skewed. We don't put it straight, it's put skewed. And the idea behind it is that even if things don't work, if things fail, you try it again, you fail again, you do it again. So that is our approach in everything that we
keep
do.
going.
We keep going.
Yeah, that's interesting. How has that sort of efficiency played out in terms of numbers for last year?
It has. I mean, MPDC as a concession, we've been a concession of the port since 2003. If you have to look at volumes from 2003, we're talking about volumes that were below 5 million tons total port. And last year we closed the year with a throughput of 32.4 million tons. And this is a growth of 3.4% from the previous years. And when we have to look at all the challenges that we face on a continuous basis, and if I can speak just of last year, we had the first quarter of last year, the last quarter of the previous year and the first quarter of last year that was struck by political turmoil in the country. We thought that all our throughput, all the projections that we had were not going to be met. But even amidst that, we're always trying to push more, and we managed to reach budget and go above budget. So we are constantly on a growth, but we do understand that's going to get to a point where for MPDC terminal that manages chrome and ferrochrome, we're only going to have so much capacity because our capacity is limited. We're investing right now in additional capacity, but we're talking about getting to 16, 17 million ton capacity. But as a total port, our growth is going to come mainly from the coal terminal as well as the containers. So we are continuously on a growth trajectory, and we just have to assess what does the market say, what do the customers say and need, and what do logistics say and do, and where our bottleneck is, and try to work towards engagement with the stakeholders to reduce those bottlenecks.
Great stuff. Well, you can see, I don't want to sound like a parent that compares the child to the child next door. But given, that we're seeing some South African chrome producers leaning more towards the port of Maputo, I mean, Glencore trucks with the PBS that you mentioned towards Maputo. I think ESSO also trucks out of Steelport to Maputo. What specific actions will Transnet take to be sort of more the preferred choice of exports to ensure port efficiency? Now that the new TUCs are coming along, surely ports also need to be sort of efficient. So what are some of the steps that Transnet will take? And maybe you mentioned some in your presentation.
Yes. Thanks. First of all, Nusa is not the child next door. She's a sister. Yeah, so you are comparing kids in the same family.
Okay.
They are literally our extension sister, because whatever we move, it ultimately lands across the border, and we partner in that sense in moving volumes. What we are doing on our end is, first of all, there's been a conversation that has been ongoing internally in Transnet around saying, should we really be prioritizing and moving cargo to our own ports at the expense of the customers? Because, like Musa was saying now, some of the chrome exporters are closer to Maputo than they are to Richards Bay. Then the conversation is, why should we force taking a train from the chrome fields all the way to Richards Bay, which doubles the turnaround time for the train, as opposed to moving it across the border, and it's going quicker and you move more volumes out of that? There are pros and cons to everything. Ultimately, the negative or the downside of that is that what Transnet could have earned as port revenue now moves across. But the flip side of it, Transnet doubles its ability to move volumes via rail in that sense, and therefore there's a balance to that. Having said so, though, the intention is there's adequate demand to supply all these facilities. We have not gotten to the maximum of the demand, and therefore we can't be having a conversation around comparing one to the other. All we need to be saying now is, how do we unlock all of these facilities such that, remember when I presented earlier, I said the mandate of Transnet is to enable the economy of the country. Enabling the economy means more production, more presence in the markets. And if that means that presence can be achieved via our partners across the border, by all means, if it has to be like that, then we follow that. That said, there is also a lot of work going into improving our facility in Richards Bay as well. We do know that the dry bulk terminal in Richards Bay has its own challenges, and there's a lot of work that has gone into understanding what needs to be done there. Similar to what we are doing in Mocha, there is a conversation and the RFP that is in the market, where we are trying to say to partners, what can we do together to bring in capital into the dry bulk terminal. What Musa has said, if you listen carefully to her response, how they've achieved what they've achieved. She's talking about investment. When people were down and not working in COVID, they were ordering equipment which requires capital. They were putting down slabs, they were putting down technology. All of these things require an equity partner that has capital to be able to do that. In their case, it's an equity partner. In our case, our equity partner being government does not have the required resources to tap into that, to enable that. That's why we are going private sector, looking for that investment. We were engaging yesterday with one of the delegates, and they're saying there's a bit of skepticism in the country the minute you mention private sector. People always think, oh, you are. The reality is what you can achieve as a Transnet today with its current balance sheet. You can double as a Transnet if you bring in a partner that's going to invest and take their share. What they will leave behind will be adequate and ample enough to carry the growth that we require. So to answer your question briefly now, to summarize, we need the investment, especially at the port. Some of the appliances that we run in Richards Bay are older than I am, and I've got grey hair, but they are still running there. You cannot wish them to efficiency. You can only invest in bringing in more appliances that will then give you what you are looking for.
But ultimately, what I'm getting from your response is that it doesn't really matter to which extent some exports are going via Maputo. The ultimate purpose is for experts to go out.
Absolutely.
We are solving for experts, right? In terms of CFM and Transnet dynamics, I want to understand that relationship. As you said, it's not a next door vibe, it's more of a sibling partnership. Tell me about that CFM Transnet dynamic, Musa, and if there is a potential for CFM to participate on Transnet's main network as a TOC.
I'm going to be using the statement that Dr. Moyo said yesterday. And she said, let me make a disclaimer. Okay. And my disclaimer is that I do not work for CFM. But notwithstanding that, we work a lot with CFM. I believe the CFM has an appetite to continue to work with Transnet. I mean, for our port, from MPDC perspective, to grow, like I said earlier, regional. And rail, in the whole corridor, the Maputo corridor does not start at the border. The Maputo corridor starts where the mines are, and it's on the South African side. And for that, we need Transnet. So we both need both of these entities to work together. And I think when there's regional countries working together, if they have a common goal and a common strategy in terms of what the objective is, then they can be able to reach the unlimited, right? So CFM does have an appetite. I do understand that there are some engagements with Transnet, possibly, someone also here could correct me, but there are some engagement with Transnet to try and get even the rail to port system network that we have right now with CFM to go to the South African side, to be a rail to port, but not only from the border, but from the mine, which will include integration with Transnet, integration with CFM, as well as integration with MPDC. So discussions are, from what I understand, on route in that regard, and CFM has expressed their appetite also to be part of the TOCs, but I don't know how that engagement is. Like I said, I cannot speak 100% on what the plan is, but I think that would be ideal for not only for both rail operators, but ultimately for the customers.
Yeah, for sure. So it's just a matter of cementing these relationships. Yes. I hear a lot of integration, and I'm looking forward to seeing how those turn out
Yes.
Also, I mean, the audience, I'm sure, would like to know, following the recent floods, how has Maputo been able to deal with that and overcome that?
Yeah, south of Mozambique is going through it right now. The floods did affected the whole city, the southern cities. From a port perspective, from our side, we did not have an impact on it because our infrastructure is built to cater for any waters. We've got good irrigation systems and all that. So, notwithstanding all of that, when we were still operational, we had product import, so we were still exporting. We had some limitations, especially when there was that closure of the rail lines, so car would come in. We didn't have a lot of truck movement coming in, but from a MPDC perspective and port perspective, we are, thank God, we're managing to operate. But from a country perspective, we're going through possibly the worst floods since I think it's 2000. So a lot of rebuild will need to happen, especially on the outskirts of Maputo and Ishashai and goes all the way closest to Mumbai. So it's not a good moment right now, but we're getting a lot of external assistance as well to help out with what the country needs, and we're hoping that we'll be able to rebuild soon.
Wonderful. Let's take a look at our questions from Slido. We've got a little under 15 minutes. Let's hear what our audience has to say. Right. First question is for Luan. It says, why did Menard decide to get into the railing business? Could this be as profitable or even more profitable than mining?
It's a key question. All of the volumes we applied for and were awarded for was our own volumes. At this stage, we don't have enough to move other people's volumes. So we could definitely do more. We did apply for significantly more than we were awarded. So yes, it's just to move on volumes. I think almost every single producer in this country across the commodities is logistically constrained and we decided to grab the bull by the horns. Say, well, let's do it. I mean, we are very experienced on logistics. We've got a really good logistics team. We've got a lot of ex-Transnet executives and in our team that are doing incredibly good work for us. So we have the skill, we have the commodity, we can guarantee the volumes. And so yeah, it made sense for us growing down the logistics.
Yeah.
So it's a way for us to diversify our risk.
The next one is for Lisa. How much more capacity does the port have to transport chrome concentrate?
Right now we are building, I always talk about building and development, a new slab for chrome concentrate that will be able to accommodate an additional 2.2 million tons. This is initial phase one, and then we're also looking at doing an additional investment in slab for an additional 1 million tons. So we're talking about between maybe second half of the year to early next year, have an additional capacity of about 2.4 million tons. Right now we are at capacity at about 13, 14 million tons, but our capacity, we have static capacity, but we also have operational capacity. And oftentimes when we have a faster dwell time and inefficiencies, which not only looking at the bird efficiencies, which I can 100% say our bird operations are great, but sometimes we've got logistics inefficiencies that can result in cargo staying in the port for longer than it should, then that could slightly impact our capacity. Hence why the need for an immediate construction of this additional capacity. So we ultimately looking at increasing our capacity by about 2 million tons, 2.2 million tons, but right now we have a capacity of about 13, 14 million tons.
Yeah. I've got another one here, and I think it's addressed to Hlengiwe Motaung. Will Zimbabwe's ban on chrome concentrate exports significantly impact your operations? We'll start with you, Bonnie.
No, not at all on our end. We've got, and in fact we are not able to service the demand of South African chrome as it is for exports, and therefore that will not leave a dent at all in terms of the volumes that we have.
Yeah. Lisa? From a port MPDC perspective, no, it won't, because our infrastructure is built in a way that is flexible. We accommodate ferrochrome as well as chrome, but when there's more demand for one commodity as opposed to another, we are flexible enough to adjust. So whether it comes chrome or ferrochrome, for us, from our the standpoint of our port and our capacity, it does not prove to be
And I'm assuming most of the cargo that comes from Zimbabwe goes to the Beira port.
It does. A lot of cargo goes to Beira port, but that's because of rail. Because to get to Maputo from Zimbabwe, there isn't a road connection. Well, there is, but it's not efficient. So it needs to come by rail. Meanwhile, to Beira, it can go by rail or road. Hence, Dr. Moyo was speaking yesterday about the agreements that they've had with CFM to be able to improve the infrastructure on the rail, and that would be fantastic. Because from an efficiency point of view, from a productivity point of view, I would say Maputo, Maputo is Maputo.
Last question that goes to Mccloskey. What are Transnet's plans on granting junior producers and various TOCs rail sidings as enablers to moving their cargo on rail to various ports? Is there a plan for junior miners in that front?
Yes, there is. We just before the restructuring of the business, the separation between TRIM and TFR, we had gone out in the market with all the sidings that we have to enable them access to the sidings, and unfortunately we had to pause that process because it coincided with the separation of rail from TFR to TRIM. But now that TRIM is fully functional and in the run, they've gone out again in the market with the very same sidings covering coal, chrome, and all the commodities in that region, where we are offering these sidings. And anyone who lends the sidings, what we are looking for mainly is if an entity has secured a siding, it has to be a multi-user siding, meaning it must accommodate new entrants as well in those sidings. So that is the plan, that's the approach. It's a process that we are hoping to close before end of the current financial year, which will then allow or enable movement of volumes into the coming year.
Wonderful. Any more questions? Questions from the floor? We've got a roving mic. If anybody is having trouble with sliding on, you're welcome to ask a question. Our technical guys are ready with your roving mic. Any questions from the floor? I think everybody's you're safe. You know, we've come to the end and we'll wrap up. We've got a little under 8 minutes, and I want all of you to think about, thoroughly about what I'm about to ask, right? I'd like for all of you to imagine the audience as your accountability partner, right? What commitment can you make today to the audience in your respective fields to ensure that we see improved exports from Southern Africa? Remember, we are solving for exports. So the audience is your accountability partner. We'll start with Luan and maybe end with Mccloskey. What is your commitment? What would you tell the audience? This is what we're committing to do, so that when next year we come back, then we're able to take on that commitment. Right?
So MENA will commit to do everything it can to reindustrialize South Africa by working with all of the stakeholders in a fair and honest manner.
Kenneth?
I'm going to be a bit controversial. Let's take a step back, right? Over the past two days, we've heard a lot of, Africa is known for its big five, big five animals. In this industry, we've heard that we've got these big five problems as well. We spoke about the 62 cents per kilowatt. We've spoken CBAM yesterday. We spoke on export tax in Africa, for that matter. We've spoken about the ban from some. We've also spoken about the inefficiencies that landed us here, you know. But on the bright side, you know, we must have this commitment that you're asking for from different role players within the industry. There's a saying, pit to vessel. It's no longer pit to port, it's pit to vessel, and every leg of the supply chain has a responsible party in it. You know, and I think as industry stakeholders, it's important that we commit to doing the best that's within your scope of the matter, of the subject matter, right? Like rail, ports, siding operations, and obviously going to like Transnet port terminals and MPDC. So I think from a Mokoyo perspective, we commit to enabling, to be enablers in this industry. Not miners, again, not rail competitors, but be enablers as Mokoyo. Yeah, thank you.
Wonderful. You, sir?
I would say that MPDC will commit to maintaining or improving even more on efficiencies. But most importantly, to cater for the product that belongs to our customers and beyond our borders, meaning beyond our port borders, and going towards engagement with stakeholders to ensure that the customer receives the best possible service from a whole logistics perspective. So we'll commit to continue to work towards the benefit of our customers, both import and on the corridor.
Great stuff. Finally, William.
Yes, so on our end, the focus for the last couple of months, 2 years to be precise, has been around improving reliability. And the numbers are showing that there is a step change. Slowly, we are seeing more and more reliability of service. We are upping the volumes. What we need to now do in shifting gears, which we are committing to, is to now improve predictability. The two are not the same. Reliability means your train will come. Predictability now says your train will come at 8. And therefore you can start planning now, knowing exactly that with assurance that Transnet will deliver on this time. When there are challenges and there are issues on the line, predictability also kicks in, because it says when there are challenges, we communicate up front and we replan together with you and still give you that predictability even in terms of challenges. That's the second gear. The third gear is cost management, and therefore offering pricing that is competitive to industry, or that enables industry to be competitive in the markets. Those are the two that we are pursuing now. We are not there yet with the reliability factor, but there's improvements. Our next focus now is on predictability and cost efficiency.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. Next year when we have you back on, hopefully we're able to welcome the KPIs, and hopefully the audience will be happy as your accountability partner. But really thank you for this insightful discussion, and I really hope the audience has got enough and has found it valuable. Thank you for your interactions, your questions, and panel, really thank you for coming through and explaining and telling us what we have in terms of our Southern African exports. Thank you for this. Panel, you can leave the stage. You are relieved. Thank you. Let's give them a round of applause. All right. And now to bring this 3-day conference to a close, I will now call up on the stage Randy Fabi. He will be joined by the Minerals Council CEO, Mccloskey Steel and Ferroalloys.